Hello and welcome to a new vlog and a video. In cooperation with ReiseJung, we're taking a look at the first 2 days on board of the Swiss Diamond, beautiful ship that I showed to you in the last video. Now we're starting our vlogs. Our first cruise on board of the ship is starting in Cologne, and our first two destinations are Zutphen and Kampen. But before that, we're starting in Hanau and we're taking the Giga bus, Bistro bus to Cologne as always. But this time it was a bit different because it was not a regular cruise. The ship was fully booked by the NOC jazz band from Hanau. It's a local jazz band that is traveling frequently, and this time they chose our beautiful Swiss Diamond for their annual holiday. With their fans, they were sailing to the Netherlands with us. Here you can see my cabin on the lower deck on the Swiss Diamond. After checking in, it's of course time to take a look at the beautiful cabin. As said in the last video, it's slightly smaller than on more modern and newer ships. It has a size of 13 square meters. One big advantage of the ship, even on the lower deck you can open the windows, so that's very nice. As you can see, here we are still in Cologne. Here you can see the bathroom, which is also pretty nice. As you can see, everything has been renovated recently, so there's everything you need. It's just a little bit smaller. As you can see, there's also a third bed, but we didn't sell it because it's only useful for children but not for adults, so we didn't sell it at all. And here we have a coffee machine, a little bit of storage space, and a little fridge. A mini bar is available as well. Here we can see the wardrobe. It's a little bit smaller than on other ships, so there's not as much storage as on other ships, but still enough to get along. And right next to the beds we have power sockets and some more additional storage. And then it was time to leave Cologne. We turned around after leaving our docking location, and now we're heading to the Netherlands. Our first stop will be tomorrow morning in Zutphen. As we had already given all important information about the excursions and the cruise itself in the bus, we now had time to enjoy the sail away from Cologne. There was no need for an information talk. We'll only have the safety briefing and the welcome cocktail in the evening. After that, it was time for the first dinner on board, and we immediately realized the food quality on board is amazing. I've never been on a ship before where the chef knows that well how to make a nice sauce. Sauces were so tasty and flavorful. That was amazing. Of course, also the rest of the food was very, very good. We then sailed past, for example, Duisburg, where you can see a lot of the industrial buildings of the Rhine-Ruhr area. Always very interesting to see. Of course, it's up to you if you would say it's beautiful, but for sure it's very interesting to see. So that's why we decided to head up to the sun deck after dinner, also because of the beautiful sunset, of course. On the Rhine, you'll always meet other river cruise ships, like here we can see the Nico Spirit, much bigger than our Swiss Diamond, of course. And here we can see those industrial buildings. But of course there's more to see, for example like this beautiful sunset and some other interesting ships sailing past us. So it was a very nice, relaxing first evening on board, even though the first day of course is always a bit stressful. And it's also possible to watch this beautiful sunset from your cabin window, as it's possible in all cabins to open the windows. And as I said, first day is always a bit more stressful than other days, so I decided to go a bit earlier to my cabin, watch the sunset and other ships from there, and then it was time to go to sleep to be ready for the next day, which of course will be much more relaxed than the first day. As I woke up, we were already at our first destination, beautiful city of Zutphen on the river Geldische IJssel. And of course I started my day with a nice cup of coffee. Then I saved the butterfly that was on the ship quite dangerously, directly the entrance area, and for some reason didn't want to fly away. So I picked it up and brought it ashore, and then it was for some reason able to fly again. And after saving the butterfly, I headed into the city for a short walk. I've been to Zutphen before, but it's always worth a visit because it is a very beautiful city. Even though the shops were still closed, it's still worth a visit. As you can see, a lot of beautiful buildings, a very beautiful city center, a lot of cafes, restaurants, so typical nice small Dutch city. Here I'm back at the beautiful Swiss Diamond. Now it's time to pick up our guests and bring them to our second excursion. In the morning we had a walking tour through the city, and now we also have a boat tour here in Zutphen. We're doing this boat tour with the so-called boats, which means whisper boats, because those are small electric boats, and they will now bring us into the nature. As always with ReiseJung, we are trying to discover new places and new excursions on every cruise. We're not trying to do the same thing all over again. Of course, if there's something great, we're gonna do it again. But we're also trying to always include new things. So Zutphen was new for us, and therefore also this excursion was new for us, and we were very surprised in a positive way by how beautiful this excursion was. Of course, we have a lot of boat tours, but this one was different because it was not going through the city center and we were not listening to history. Instead, we were going through the nature, and only after a couple of minutes we were in nature like this. It was quite interesting to see, to have this nice nature just a couple of minutes away from a big city like Zutphen. So it was a very relaxing excursions. Of course, there were some explanations by our skipper, even in German, so that was very nice for our guests. And it was very interesting to sail under those very low bridges, to learn a bit about the city and especially about the nature, and to see some very cute animals. There were a lot of young animals to see, a little bit of the city to see, but we were mainly seeing nature, and that was very, very nice, and I really enjoyed this excursion. It was much better than expected. I had high expectations, but they were exceeded by far because it was just extremely beautiful. As you can see, we're going through some very tiny canals and get to see a lot of animals, a lot of nature, so it was a fantastic excursion. Here we are on a little bit bigger lake. There's a lot of water in and around Zutphen. Also here there were a lot of baby animals and other interesting things to watch. And then we were heading back to the starting point of the boat tour, and then we brought the guests back on board. And as soon as everybody was back on board, we were also leaving Zutphen, heading for our next destination in Kampen. Because with ReiseJung, we were always trying to sail during the day, not staying whole day in one city and sailing in the night and then waking up in the next city like most big companies are doing. But we don't want to have a city tour, we want to have a proper cruise, and for us one of the most important part about cruising is seeing the landscape during the day, and that's why we're always sailing during the day as well. And then you get to see interesting things like this. This is a lifting bridge opening just for us. There's a car bridge and a railway bridge that was opening for us. Of course, that was very impressive to see. Not too much space left on the left and right side. So this was already a very interesting start for our first sailing on the IJssel during the day of this cruise. This is a river that sees a bit of cruise traffic, but not too much, because it's only available for ships with a length of maximum 110 meters, and most modern river cruise ships are nowadays 135 meters long. After lunch, we sailed past a group of trees where you can almost always see some storks. As you can see, there were also a lot of storks in the nests here. And there's also a former castle, but that's not too beautiful, it's just a ruin, but still interesting to see. Otherwise, there are not too many things that I can point out. Of course, I'm always doing the announcements on the ship, giving explanations about what to see. But here on the IJssel, you're more sailing through nature, so there's not too much you can explain, but there's always something to see. There are animals, there is nature, and every now and then you're sailing past a city. Here we are sailing past the city of Deventer, also a very beautiful city and an interesting cruise destination. And we are already planning to do a cruise like this again in the next years, and then we will probably stop here in Deventer instead of Kampen, for example, so that we have not the exactly identical cruise again, but slightly different. Then we will visit Deventer as well. But now we're heading to Kampen, which is also a very beautiful city worth a visit. As I said, there are always some animals to see, whether it's birds or horses, cows, there's always something to see. Here we can see the Vista Sky, a river cruise ship much bigger than the Swiss Diamond. This is the biggest ship size possible here on the IJssel, as this ship is 110 meters long and has 3 decks, much bigger than our Swiss Diamond. Here we can see some horses, and of course there's always something to see. Every now and then there's also something interesting you can point out in an announcement, like the Hanseboog. This is a railway bridge with a very interesting design, very interesting architecture that we're now passing close to the city of Zwolle, and behind that there's also an interesting road bridge. So it was a very nice, relaxing afternoon with a lot of things to see, a lot of nature, and then it was time for yet another fantastic dinner in the restaurant. Of course, I had a double portion again. Maybe you already know I'm almost always asking for double portion, and that's of course always possible to ask for a bigger or smaller portion. Here we are approaching the beautiful city of Kampen. And you will see that there's not too much going on in the evening in Kampen, and that's because Kampen is situated in the so-called Bible Belt. That's a part of the Netherlands where the people are quite religious, and therefore a lot of shops are closed in the evening, for example, but also here you will of course find some bars. But before heading there, we went into the city to discover the beautiful city. Of course, Kampen is also worth a visit even though the shops are closed. This is the central square where you'll also find some restaurants, cafes and bars. But we decided to first do a tour through the city, discover the beautiful city, and then go to a bar. Of course, we're gonna try a few local beers, or at least Dutch beers, because there's a wide selection of beers available in the Netherlands. I was very happy to see this cute cat in the restaurant. Then we ordered a beer. This is not local, but it's from the Netherlands. And then the cat decided to jump on my lap and get some cuddles whilst I was enjoying my beer, so that was a very, very nice evening. As you can see, we stayed quite a while. It was already dark when we left, so it's now time to head back on board. We stayed overnight, left Kampen very early in the next morning to head to our next destination, which is the city of Lemmer. But that will be the topic of the next upcoming video. Here you can see when this video will be uploaded and the name of the song. As always, I'd like to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to comment, like, subscribe or share the video link, and I hope to see you in my next video then.